We'd like to welcome each and every individual to the Voices of Integrity podcast for building strong team members. And how you doing on everything? If you want to see how you're doing in a particular group, you just click on podcast completion summary, and this will give your percentage of where you're at, and then you can click on it here, and you can see which ones you're missing. And so, and then how are you doing on watching the podcast? And then how are you doing on sharing a reflection? The next level beyond that, is going to be, is going to go ahead and be where you're doing a chat. So you go in, you don't chat everybody, but you go in. And so, I would find it interesting. Like Rosanna's at 100%, Nora's at 92%. That's pretty strong. Like that'd be pretty interesting to see. Okay, why are they at that? And so I could go in and I can go ahead and I can find one for Nora, or I can find one for Rosanna. And then you can create a chat. You can rate these. So, don't be afraid to rate them less than a 5, but definitely the 5s, you want to rate the 5s what they are, and then create a chat about this. So have conversations because we're remote, we don't get to work in the same office. So we can often lose connection. We don't build the trust. We don't build the working together. So Adam went ahead and he asked about the topic of how do you get people to be like family. And so Adam's over in Pakistan and they're over there. So he's going to go ahead and, take over kind of the responsibility. It's his duty, he thinks. It's his duty to go ahead and care for his parents. And Adam, you can interrupt me if I'm wrong or something. If I'm missing something, feel free to jump in. It's his duty, it's his responsibility to care for his parents the rest of their life. So that's fascinating to me on how to go ahead. How did they train him to do that? Like that's just, I don't know, that's just cool. And so in the previous one, in the quantum sales training, we went over the roller coaster principle. And so do we go ahead and, link to that one? That would be a good link. Adam, don't have to go through it again. But inconsistent actions produce inconsistent results. Consistent actions produce consistent results. So it was a really good session. Then we talked about hurt and being hurt at the heart level, and then crab in the bucket and how we get stuck and how do you get unstuck. And then what Luke wanted to do is Luke wanted us to talk about customers. And so in here, in the rings of influence, within leadership, we often think we're the most important part, but we are the furthest away from the client customer. Our importance is only as valuable as it relates to the value we directly bring to the customer through other rings. So Tom, I had known him for 7 years, I think it was. And he says, yeah, I have something I call rings of influence. I said, what's that? He didn't have the diagram. He just verbally, he said, well, one of the hardest things is as we grew as Century 21 was getting people to realize that they're not the center of the universe. I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, it's like the franchisor, the one who started it, they think they're often the most important. The franchisee, the one who owns it, they think they're the most important. The agent, the employee, the leader, the manager, they think they're the most important. And everybody loses sight. The most important is the client. The client is the most important. I said, wow, that's pretty profound. So I went to sleep that night, woke up the next morning, and I'm like, holy cow. And this whole model came to me in my sleep. And so the development is from the left to the right, but the importance is from the right to the left. And then this is rings of influence. I like when I was a boy, I got into magic some, had a little magic kit and everything. And there's these rings that the magicians go ahead and they spin the rings and then they bring them out and put them in and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. It's fascinating as a kid. And I think of that, like your life spinning, my life spinning, all of our lives are spinning and they're interacting with one another. And our clients are too. So our lives rings will shift and spin. And so Tom would go ahead and say, why doesn't, the agents have a hard time? Why don't my clients do this and this? And we forget, our clients, they're the most important. Without them, we wouldn't have a business. So our lives rings will shift or spin, which creates a connection. We often lose sight of the fact that we are only touching our clients in a small area of their lives. Do you want to touch them in more than one area? Which is why, Riverside Retreat, the doing the connection there. Why, in some of the things that like Compass is doing in newsletters, like and having parties or having events where customer appreciation and bring them in. And so the more points of connection we make with our clients, the more opportunities we have to create a client for life. So what's the value of a client financially? It's not just their business that we're talking about the rest of life. Over here on the right, natural laws integrated, you integrate these things here, and then it goes into the cluster principle. And so if one person, so based on the cluster principle, they've done research and an average customer is going to know between 3 and 9 other people over the next 6 to 12 months that they could refer to us. What if we got 2 customers from every customer we had because we were intentional and we were disciplined and we provided so much value, not just the products or services we have, but something far more than that? Like, what if we were able to do that? We could double our business, no advertising, no social media, no nothing, just by getting all of our customers. We could double our business every single year. Pretty fascinating. So in the book, Good to Great, it's how do you build great teams? It's great team members. What's a great team member? It's a disciplined person, disciplined thinker, disciplined in taking action. And so how do we become more disciplined? And Luke, he's going through the white papers, which is pretty amazing. And Nora's going through and freshening them up and going through and putting cool color, turning them into booklets. And so do you internalize what's in it for me? Like Luke on the Young Men's podcast, Voice of Integrity for Young Men, he talked about selfishness. And how do you go ahead? I mean, just fascinating conversations. And then, so are you going through this and do you care? Is your reflex to care about somebody else, or are you just kind of honestly just self-absorbed? So are you going to go ahead and reach out to Rosanna or Nora and say, that's just awesome you guys are doing? Like, wow, that's awesome. Good work on that. Are you going to go ahead and, reach out to Mike Bailey and say, hey, Mike, I don't even know you, but I'm part of, Life Masteries Institute Synergy, and I wanted to get to know you. Elise, who over in Germany, and oh my goodness, that poor girl's going through a lot. So, hey, how you doing? Anything I can do to help you? Or Kevin, who's new, hey, anything I can do to help you and what you think, and going through and looking for opportunities to go ahead and create connections and give people encouragement or exhortation or, something where you're like, do we just care about ourselves, or is our reflex to care about other people, really, truly care? And so, I've been wanting something like this for decades, literally. This is like, it's less than 15 minutes. Most of these are 10 minutes. But if we don't internalize them, does it really change our heart, mind, and soul? Does it really connect us together, or not so much? And so maybe go back and maybe interact. I mean, it only takes a couple minutes. You just go back, you read it, say, that was a really good post, or I have a question about that post, about that reflection. Like, what does that mean? That's fascinating in what you're doing. This is what I see. How do you create interaction? So always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.